Music is a very important part of modern society. You can hardly go anywhere without hearing it. There's a bunch of different genres in music, such as pop, rock, hip hop, rap, or one of my favorites, jazz. Like any other genre, there's many different instruments that make up the jazz genre, which includes trumpet, drum sets, keyboard instruments, and one of the most famous instruments is the saxophone. I'm here today to teach you how to play, specifically the tenor saxophone. First up, you need to know how to sit. When sitting and playing an instrument, you need to sit straight back, butt near the edge of your seat, feet straight on the ground. This is to make sure your air can flow as best as possible through your instrument, so the quality of your instrument doesn't sound terrible. This just basically ensures your instrument functions the way it's supposed to. Next up, you need to know how to hold the instrument. On most saxophones, you'll find two little black spots, which includes a black loop near the bottom and a plain black circle at the top. First up, you take your right hand and you put your thumb on the loop at the bottom. And you take your fingers and you go 1, 2, 3. This makes sure you know how to you have your proper grip on the bottom. Then you take your left hand, you put your thumb on the circle there. Make sure you can hit this button. You take your fingers and you go 1, skip this 1, 2, 3. And that's to make sure you can play all the notes. Make sure you're not holding the buttons down, as that is how you play your notes, and you don't always want to be playing the same note. Up next, you know how to set your embouchure. Your embouchure is basically the shape you make when you put your mouth on the mouthpiece. First, you make an ooh or an aw sound. This usually lowers your jaw, which you need for a tenor saxophone because it's harder to play lower notes. You go aw, and then you take your lower lip and you put it over your bottom teeth. This is just to basically cushion yourself on there and not damage your reed. And then with your mouth like this, remember, don't cover the top teeth. We aren't Granny. We're playing the saxophone. And you take it and you barely put your mouth on the mouthpiece. Not like on a tippy tip, but like a fourth or a third of the way down. You don't want to put too much of your mouth in there because then it's not going to sound good and you can't make any. You'll be like, see, that didn't sound good if I made it sound at all. You want to make sure you're up near the tip. And then once you're on there, like this, make sure you tighten the corners of your lips. This makes it so air can't get through the corner of your lip and it goes through the saxophone, which is how you play the instrument. Now, like I said, you need to get air, if I haven't emphasized it enough, through the saxophone. So you want to make sure you're sending fast air through your saxophone, not just loosey-goosey. Because if you don't send it through fast enough, you'll sound like this. Yeah, notice how that sounded like air going through a saxophone? That's all it is. It's just air going like through the breeze. You need to make sure you send it in there fast. So you go so it makes a sound. Up next, you need to know how to play the notes. Because now you know how to hold it, how to sit, how to put your mouth on it, but how do the notes go? And so when reading music, which we call sheet music, there you have a staff. On the staff, you have your notes, which go E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, and then F at the top again. This is specifically for treble instruments, which is what a saxophone is, not bass instruments, but we don't need to worry about the difference. When you play notes for warming up, you usually play a scale, which is a group of one octave of notes. One of the most common ones to play is the C major scale. For a tenor saxophone, the C major scale starts on the middle C, which is played by putting your finger right there. Just hold this one note down. Not the button on the side, not any other buttons, just this one in the middle right here. Sounds like this. Now, like I said, we usually go an octave, which is a group of instruments. So we're going to go up to the upper octave, so we need to go higher. From here, we go up to a D, which is you hold down these three, and then you hold down these three, and you press the octave key. It sounds something like this. Lucky for us, the saxophone is a really easy instrument to finger, which is what the note patterns are called. And so, to get up from a D to an E, the next note, you just remove one of your fingers on the bottom. So now you have 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. Still hold the octave button, and that sounds like. And you keep removing a note, so you have F, G, E, A, B, and back up at high C, middle with the octave key. and that's how you play a scale. Usually you go up, and then you can also go back down. So, and like I said earlier, a scale is usually only 1 octave long, but there's also a lower octave, which we don't need to worry ourselves with. But that's like what you do with the rest of the keys on here. So you can also go. And that's lower octave. There's also notes in between the notes, like I've said. So you see how we have a B and we have an A. Well, there's a note in between them called B flat or A sharp. Flats and sharps are just basically variations that make your notes higher or lower. It can add some spice to your music, but we don't need to worry about those too much. And now that you know what the notes to play, how long do you play the notes for? And that's where the note length comes into play. For note length, you usually have your 4 basics. You have whole note, which you play for 4 beats, a half note, which you play for 2 beats, a quarter note, which you play for 1 beat, and an eighth note, which we're not going to get to, for a half a beat. There's also more even beyond that, which we definitely won't get to, which is 16ths and more and more and more. And the counterpart to your notes is you have your rest. So you have whole, half, quarter, and eighth, and beyond again. The rest are when you aren't playing, so you're just sitting there quietly. Make sure you don't make a noise, because the whole point of a rest is for no sound to be coming out. You specifically, but anybody. So when you go back to it, you play your note for 4 counts. So that just means you literally count 1, 2, 3, 4, and play. So on the C, played for 4 counts. You can play this for as fast as or as slow as you need, and that's the tempo you play. So you could play 1, 2, 3, 4, or you could play 1, 2, 3, 4. Or you could go 1, 2. Yeah, I'm sure you get the point. You can play it as long as you need, but make sure you always hold it for 4, 2, or 1. And now that you know the basics for your note length and your note rhythms, you have a piece of sheet music. I'm sure if you've ever had a friend in band, they've at least mentioned hot cross buns once, so I'm going to teach you how to play this. Here is the music for hot cross buns, and it focuses on 4 major notes, which you can see as E, D, and C. These E, D, and C's you play throughout a mixture of half notes, whole notes, and quarter notes. On the sheet music, you can also see another few key tier things, which is the 4/4. 4/4 means there's 4 beats in a measure, and it means they're counted through quarter notes. This is getting into more complex stuff that you don't need to know for the basics, but just know that means that each measure, which is the in between the lines, is going to have at least 4 quarter notes in it, so 4 beats. And you'll see this figure, which is about right there, which is a breathing mark or a breath mark. This is when you're supposed to take your breath in if it's not a rest. Because this is when you mark you know how to play rest, so you don't just sound out super choppy. You don't hear an instrument playing Beethoven's Ninth and in the middle of going da 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 da, they are going da 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 da. This is making sure you play at the right time and you're breathing at the right time so you don't sound choppy. So first up in hot cross buns, you have a half note, and so you go on the E, which is if you remember 1, 2, 3, 1, 2 with the octave key. So you go on the D, and then you play whole note, and then you breathe, and you do it again. But this time, you played the C for only 2 beats, because it was a half note. And then here, you would rest for 2 beats, so you go rest for 2, and then you play a series of quarter notes, so you go rest, and that's how you simply play hot cross buns. And now you know how to play a very basic scale and very basic song on the tenor saxophone. I know playing an instrument takes a lot of hard work, but as long as you remember to keep the right posture, hold the instrument right embouchure, you can read your notes, you can read the note length, and in general read the sheet music, you can learn how to play an instrument. It's a lot of hard work, but I promise you it can have a lot of good turnout and it's a lot of fun. And you can get anywhere. You can even be at the likes of the best musicians you know.